My name is Zenobia Harris, and I am the CEO for the Kent Chamber of Commerce. On behalf of myself, the Board of Directors, and staff here, we'd like to welcome you to our February Luncheon, which is our Congressional update. Before we get started, just going to go over a few housekeeping items. This copyrighted webinar is presented by the Kent Chamber of Commerce and may not be reproduced or transmitted in any form without the express written consent of the Chamber. This meeting is being recorded by our media sponsor, South King Media, also known as I Love Kent. And for all things Kent and community, you can follow them on I Love Kent on Facebook. If you are a member, there is a great free advertising package available, and you'll receive more information on that in our follow-up survey. Want to go ahead and take time to thank our sponsors. So again, our media sponsor, Scott Schaefer with I Love Kent. Again, when you receive your survey after this meeting, you will get all of his contact information. I'd like to thank our investors. As you can see on the screen here, we have our gold and silver investors. We also have a bronze level investors. And then last but not least, we do have copper level investors who do double their membership dues. So we appreciate all of our investors. Without our investors, we wouldn't be able to provide the program that we do on such a consistent basis. So I appreciate their commitment to the Chamber and the overall mission of the Chamber as well. So our luncheon sponsor today is Cindy Cameron. She is a loan officer with Fairway Independent Mortgage. Thank you, Cindy, for being here, and thank you for being our luncheon sponsor. I'll go ahead and turn it over to you for your 5-minute sponsor presentation.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Zenobia, and appreciate the opportunity to be able to sponsor this. It is definitely something I would encourage all of you guys to do. As Zenobia stated, my name is Cindy Cameron, and I'm with Fairway Independent Mortgage Corporation. We are a nationwide mortgage company, but we do everything locally, so we are very fast to respond. I always like to point out what our CEO says is it's not about the loans we do, it's about the hearts we change and the people we help. So he truly believes in making sure we support our community. So with that being said, I would like to share a little bit about my professional life. So just to give you some reference points, I have been in the business since 1997, and I'm pretty sure some of you weren't even born yet. But that was the year that the Mars Pathfinder landed on the surface of Mars. And for those of you that don't know, the Pathfinder has a Kent relation, and so that's kind of cool. I've been the best of Kent since 2013. That was the year when Sony released the PlayStation 4 gaming station, so that was kind of funny. And I've been with Fairway since 2016, and in that year, there were more women were elected to the Senate than ever before. So I thought that was kind of a cool statistic. I've been the president of the Kent Chamber 2 different times, so for 1 year at a time. I've been on the board for over 9 years, and in last year, I helped 78 families close on a mortgage. So you may be wondering, well, who is Cindy? So I'd like to share with you a little bit about my personal life. And I have been married to my husband for over 20 years. And we have 2 golden doodles, and we're pretty sure they're just about ready to talk at any time, as you can see from these pictures. What do I like to do in my spare time? I love to spend time with my friends. We go on adventures. We love to go wine tasting. And if that adventure may include a Seahawk game, we love to travel and do that too. We've been both to London and to California to see the Seahawks play. So we also try to get away on weekends to enjoy all kinds of different areas in Washington, and especially if the pups can come with us. So just now that you know a little bit about me, what do I do at Fairway? Well, I'm a loan officer, as I said, and we help people to buy a home or refinance a home. And I get a lot of questions about what that looks like. So I just wanted to share with you quickly what factors go into getting you pre-approved. Of course, we look at your credit history, good or bad. And I'll go into, if it's not where you want it to go, I'm happy to help you get it to where you want it to be. I want to make sure that everybody out there is in the best position they can for the American dream of owning a home. It is the way to build wealth, and it is the best way for your employees even. It creates value for your employees, and they're more likely to stick around for the long run. So we also look at, of course, your credit score. We look at what the amount of debt is to the amount of income that you have. We look at that employment history. We do want to make sure that you have a job and that you've worked for at least 2 years. But other than that, it's okay to make changes. We look at what your income is, and we want to see that it's a stable income. And then we look at kind of your assets and your liabilities. We want to verify where that down payment is coming from. There are all kinds of scenarios out there. So if there's something you have a specific question on, please make sure that you contact me. But a pre-approval is basically like going to the doctor for your finances. We want to just make sure you're in good health. There's different levels of pre-approvals. So the first one isn't even on there, and that's when you just give me a call. We kind of go through verbally what you guys have in income, what you think your credit score looks like, and what you think your liabilities look like. And then I tell you, yep, that's about how much you can qualify for. And you say, okay, great, let's take it to the next level. So the next level would be a pre-approval, and that's where we do pull your credit and we review your credit score. You supply all your documents for your income and your assets. We verify what your employment is, and we verify that what you think your income is the same thing that my underwriter thinks your income is. And then we put it through and get you an approval. And you can use that at that point to go and shop for homes. My opinion is to get you fully underwritten. That's the way to go. That's going to be where we do all the same things that we said before, but we take it one step further and we actually submit the file to my underwriter so that they can review everything and make sure that they agree with what I say your scenario looks like. And they may ask us for a couple of documents, no big deal, happens all the time. So that's going to give you a much stronger purchasing power. Once it's been reviewed and I can tell sellers that you are fully underwritten, that gives them a huge relief. So I want to make sure that we are doing that for all of our clients. All right, so one of the things I talked about, next slide, please. Thank you. Is your credit. Credit is a huge piece of decision making. So we have invested in a department called Credit Tool. Credit Tool is going to help us maximize your credit. So if your credit isn't exactly where we want it to be, we will give you the steps and give you personalized plans so that we can tell you what to do to get it to where you want it to be. So that could be everything from wanting to get your score from a 660 to a 700 to get a better interest rate. Or it could even be maybe you don't even have a credit score, which is okay. A lot of people don't know that. And we will help you for free put together a plan to get your credit built up and maximize that credit score for you. So I love that we do that. There's not a lot of lenders out there that do that. So that definitely puts us a step above others out there. Next is Homebot. So Homebot, next slide, please. Homebot is something that I have invested in this year. And even if you're not looking to buy and you currently own, I would love to provide this financial dashboard for you. It's completely free for you. And every single month, you're going to get a dashboard. And can I get the next slide, please? Thank you. And this dashboard is going to give you all kinds of great information. It's going to give you the estimated value of your home. And one of the things that I love about this estimated value is it is very accurate and very current. Okay, so then you say, great, I have all this equity. What can I do with it? It gives you some different suggestions on if you wanted to do a cash out refinance. It gives you suggestions on like what a solar panel would cost. Maybe you want to do a cash out refinance to build out that kitchen because you went out there and looked at houses and none of them fit what you wanted. So you say, well, let's take advantage of some of the equity I have. So that those are all some options of things that you can do. And like I said, even if you're not buying, but you do own a home, just shoot me an email and I would love to sign you up on this report every single month. So that's all I have for today. I really appreciate your time. Here's all my contact information. I would love to bring coffee to your office and give this same presentation or a different presentation to your employees. Or if you personally have any questions, please reach out. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Cindy, for that presentation. You should have had a slide there for like recommendations. Who would recommend me? I will raise my hand and say that my family has used Fairway Independent Mortgage. We've used Cindy specifically. So I appreciate your personal detail and attention to our specific needs as homeowners. So we appreciate you. Thank you so much for sponsoring the luncheon today.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yes. All right, so now it's time for some virtual networking. Important to be here on time. We'll do a quick roundtable introduction. When you see your name and information on the slide, you want to unmute and give a 30-second introduction. You'll notice that your contact information is already displayed, so you don't need to give that information. It'd be best to use your 30 seconds to talk about any specials you're running, any needs, your goals for 2022, or even the perfect client for you. And so we'll go ahead and get started. Our first person up is.
That was quick. So I'm Julie Schott with the Madison team, and we specialize in office furniture to fit your specific needs and your specific budget. And an ideal client for me right now is someone in South King County, close to this area. Because we like to be hands-on. I like to meet at my customers face to face, and we're looking for long-term clients. We're great with transactional business, but I want a customer for life. So that's what I'm looking for.
Hi, my name is Yvonne Walker. I am the banking center manager here at Kent, Heritage Bank down here in downtown Kent. My ideal customer basically is any consumer or business customer who needs specialized banking or just any everyday banking. We'd love to help small and medium-sized businesses, really our specialty. We give specialized service. You're not a number in the crowd. Some of you may be feeling that way, so come see us and we can show you how real banking is done. The special we have right now is through one of our business partners through Elevon, which is our bank card processing. And if they can't meet or beat your current bank card processing costs, they will give you a $1,000 Visa gift card. So there's no risk. Check it out, see if they can save you money. If they can't, then they give you a $1,000 Visa gift card. If they can, then we save you money. So that's here in Kent, in Heritage.
Well, good morning. My name is Dennis Wilson. I'm the business money management coach at Harborstone Credit Union. I want to say a lot of the things that Yvonne just said applies to me as well. So if you paid attention to her, just ditto that, pull it over to me. My job as a business money management coach is to just help the different businesses as a personal banker and to work with them not only on their business accounts, but possibly also their personal accounts as well. So I'd love to work with the small businesses out there. And the only thing different between me and Yvonne is we don't have that Elevon special going on right now. So just go to Yvonne for that one.
Okay, I'm Katrina Paradine, and I am with John L. Scott Real Estate. And I have been doing real estate for about 4 years now, got into it, and I love it. And I just want you guys to know, if you're looking to buy or sell or just want to know the value of your home, reach out to me because I'm there for you.
Hi, everybody. Frank Bicey. I am with BBSI, We are small business advocates. We help businesses with everything HR, payroll, talent acquisition, and business consulting. So we're a PEO, professional employer organization. And a perfect client for us is that small business owner that has got a lot of things going on and they want to take some of those administrative burdens off their plate. And we help them plan for growth and success. Frank Bicey with BBSI.
Hi, good morning, everyone. And let's see, the ideal customer for SCAC is we're a nonprofit supporting people with disabilities and jobs in the community. As the labor market is really tight right now for finding employees, please reach out and we can help you maybe find the perfect match. So please let us know.
Hey everybody, this is Allison. I am a COO and co-owner of Out of the Box Manufacturing. We're a electronics contract manufacturer. We're currently on the Renton side of 180th, but looking to move into the city of Kent here in the next couple of years. So just really glad to be here. Folks that we'd like to help are local folks with their own product that needs electronics manufacturer to be part of that part. So we're a contract manufacturer, part of the supply chain for local companies building products. Thank you.
Julia Atwood, I'm the COO with Shannon and Associates, and we're a Kent public accounting firm specializing in assisting businesses and successful individuals in obtaining and achieving their goals.
Okay, hi, Barbara Phillips, Community Network Council, nonprofit located here in Kent. We do mentoring and professional development with teachers. We work with the Kent School District mainly. That's it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Of course, thank you.
Yeah, I'm sure folks will join just a little bit later, and then this will also be sent out along with a 2-minute survey at the end. So if you wanted to contact anyone on the slide, you're able to do so. So now it is my pleasure to introduce our 2022 president, Sarah McNeish. She is the Development and Communications Director at Multi-Service Center. MSC has been a member of the Chamber since 1997, and I'm excited to work with her as president this year. She served on the board of directors as well as the event committee for multiple years, and she is well versed in Chamber. Her goal this year is to bring integrity, candor, and creativity to her position. So please help me welcome Sarah McNeish, our 2022 president. Sarah?
Thank you, Zenobia, and thank you all for joining us today. If you're unfamiliar with what Multi-Service Center is, we're a nonprofit serving South King County with resources in housing, energy assistance, education, and employment. We operate the Federal Way Food Bank and the Washington State Long-Term Care Ombudsman Program. So it's quite a mouthful. We do a lot, and happy to be here and part of the Chamber. It is my pleasure to introduce our guest speakers today, Congresswoman Dr. Kim Schreier and Congressman Adam Smith. On your screen, you should find contact information for our speakers coming up. There it is. Congresswoman Kim Schreier represents Washington's 8th Congressional District, which includes much of King, Pierce, Kittitas, Chelan counties, and portions of Douglas County. Kim grew up the daughter of a public school teacher and an engineer. Her father, an engineer, instilled in Kim a love for science, a passion that led Kim to a degree in astrophysics at UC Berkeley, and then to medical school. Her mother taught her the value of education and teachers and the importance of unions and collective bargaining. Prior to being elected to Congress on November 6, 2018, Kim spent her career as a pediatrician at Issaquah, working with children across the Puget Sound region and helping families navigate the healthcare system. In Congress, Kim uses this expertise to inform her work on issues that improve the lives, health, and well-being of children. Dr. Kim Schreier currently serves on the Energy, Commerce, and Agriculture committees. We also have with us today Congressman Adam Smith, who represents the 9th Congressional District, which includes part of King and Pierce counties. Adam was born in Washington, D.C. and raised in SeaTac, Washington, where his father, Ben, worked as a ramp serviceman at SeaTac Airport and was active in the local machinists union. His mother, Layla, stayed at home raising Adam and his 2 brothers. Adam campaigned door to door, eventually doorbelling the entire district twice and defeating the 16-year incumbent in the 1990 election. When he took office in January 1991, Adam was 25 years old and the youngest state senator in the country. Adam's top priority is to encourage broad-based economic opportunity by ensuring all Americans have access to high-quality education and job training opportunities, building a stronger transportation infrastructure, reforming our tax code, and supporting social programs that provide a bridge for struggling families to get back to work. Thank you for both being here today, and we're excited to hear what you've been working on that is critical to business success. We'll ask each of you to provide us with an update. And then if any of you have questions for either of our guests, please put them in the chat and let us know who your question is for. And we'll go ahead and get started with Congresswoman Dr. Kim Schreier.
Oops. So, hi, I'm not Kim Schreier. I'm her staffer, Eleanor. I know she's running from another briefing before this, so she is not with us quite yet, and she should be on very soon.
Thank you. And I know we have Adam Smith coming on a little bit later. Is he here early or no? No, that's okay.
No, he won't be able to get on until 12:15.
Okay, as discussed. So he's
Okay.
not late. Yes, you discussed
Yeah.
that. No problem.
Perfect.
Well, great. Well, while we're waiting on the Congresswoman, I do want to recognize that we do have a government affairs committee. And the Government Affairs Committee really keeps their ear to the ground on what is going on in our community as far as legislation is concerned. The Kent Chamber is also part of the South Sound Coalition, where it's multiple chambers, including the Kent Chamber, the Renton Chamber as a friend, the Covington, the Seattle South Side, Fife Milton Chamber as well. And so we all have legislation that we have created an issue paper. You all should have seen the issue paper. It went out in our newsletter last week, and just some of the things that the chamber is tracking, right? So again, we're tracking anything that is important to businesses or that will have an impact on business. We do want you to know that the chamber is actively testifying, actively signing in support of or lack thereof any legislation that would have a negative impact on business. If you'll notice on your weekly newsletter now, there's a little section on the bottom that just says Government Affairs Corner. And in that Government Affairs Corner, you'll notice some of the bills that we've signed in support of or not. And just keep in mind, if you have any questions, you can click on the House bill or the Senate bill, and it will come up all the information so you see kind of where we stand. I thought it was really important for our members to know what the chamber is doing on a daily basis as it relates to that. I don't know if I've done a great job of communicating the impact that we have legislatively, not only as a chamber being the sixth largest city in the state, but also as part of the South Sound Coalition. We've done great work as it relates to transportation. This chamber, along with our neighboring chambers, signed a lot of letters and went to a lot of meetings about the long-term care tax. And as you all know, that was actually, I don't know what word to use, I'm going to say paused, but that was paused, and it's going to take a look at it in the next couple of years. So that's a benefit for our businesses of really understanding, the impact of the chamber. So we will do here at this chamber a better job of just kind of telling that story of what we're doing, because we are every day fighting for our businesses, fighting for their success, trying to understand and navigate any of the grant processes, funding, taxes. We have some great things coming up right now with shared work and a series. I want to say Liza can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's like a 7 series from that department, just to help our businesses understand, the benefits that are out there. So just wanted to kind of give that shout out. And again, just stop me when you need to, when the Congresswoman has arrived. I did notice that we had, and it was perfect timing, we had another person join in who is part of the Government Affairs Committee and has been for a while. Wanted to give him the opportunity to introduce himself. Greg, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Awesome. So just tell us your name, organization, and kind of, what you do. We'd love to hear about you.
Thank you. So I'm Greg Hafner. I am a business and real estate attorney with Curran Law Firm here in downtown Kent. I've been involved with the chamber just about all of the 22 years that I've been in downtown Kent. I've been formerly treasurer with the chamber and on the board for a number of years, currently serving on the Government Affairs Committee. I'm also involved with the Rotary Club of Kent that meets at noon on every Tuesday, as well as pro bono legal counsel to the Kent Downtown Partnership. And appreciate all the work that the chamber has done. It's given me lots of opportunities to meet people that have become friends and clients. And I really appreciate the Government Affairs Committee and the work that it's doing.
Thank you for joining. Greg, you do so much work in the community. I'm always amazed at someone who has such a great organization or a company, and you're known, in the community as a leader and a giver. And I just appreciate everything that you do. We also have here someone where our passions are totally aligned. She's with the Kent School District. Dee, are you able to introduce yourself and kind of tell us what you're doing and what's going on with CTE?
Hello. Yeah, actually it's CTE month here in the Kent School District. So if you have an opportunity to follow our social media, the district, or actually the CTE has its own Twitter and, or maybe Facebook, I don't know, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Anyway, we have some cool stories of KSD alumni who took CTE classes and how it helped direct them in their lives. So that's super cool. Zenobia and I have opportunity to work from time to time together on connecting students with job shadow or internship opportunities so they can kind of explore what they might want to do after high school. If you all are interested in that, I'll drop my email in here. I like to keep in a database of folks to reach out to when I have the student that walks up with a random interest that I'm like, I'll just post like, does anyone know anyone that does this job? So thanks for the opportunity to say hello. Just got word that we still are not allowed to have visitors or guests in the building. I'm very sad. We were hopeful that went away, but we are allowing guests and visitors to come virtually into classrooms too. If you have something you'd like to share with students, I can help coordinate visits that way.
Sounds good. Thank you so much in the work that you do. And so now we will welcome to the stage. I can't wait to be back in person. Dr. Congresswoman Kim Schreier, it is your turn. I noticed she's joined us. Thank you for joining.
Hi, Zenobia. It's good to see you. Hello, everybody. And I see Eleanor from my team is on. I apologize for keeping you waiting. I was just coming from a top secret briefing on Ukraine and Russia. And so thank you for your patience. And I understand you will be seeing Adam Smith shortly after me. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. Well, I thought what I would do is give a couple comments and then open things up for questions so that I talk about what you want to talk about. But I first just want to say thank you for welcoming me. And I am so glad that my office was able to help many small businesses make it through the pandemic. I know these past couple of years have been particularly challenging. And while some businesses are back up and running, some really never took a hit during the pandemic. I know that there are a lot of common threads that are going on right now. And I thought I would address some of those that I understand that many businesses are not all the way back up and running, that the pandemic is still keeping people away from indoor dining, that gyms are still struggling. And so I want you to know that I have continued to ask for a re-upping of the restaurant renovation fund. That's not what it's called. The restaurant
revitalization.
Thank you, revitalization fund, to make sure that we can keep our restaurants afloat. I am also, of course, working on the rapid testing front and the vaccination front to help us manage this pandemic and learn to live with it in a way that we continue to go out to theaters and gyms and to restaurants and can do that safely, knowing that we will not end up in the hospital or dying or overwhelming our healthcare system. So I wanted to let you know that part. In addition, I hear from a lot of businesses about how hard it is to find workers right now. And I am hearing that all across the board. I think that it is a complex issue that you can attribute some to a great retirement or resignation, depending on which field you're in and how those IRAs and 401ks were looking, or how the job seemed in retrospect. But regardless, whether you are talking about doctors, nurses, or hospitality workers, or waiters, servers, or cooks, this has been a really hard time to find labor. So I know it is a tight labor market, and I know that that means that wages are going up, and that puts yet another pressure point on businesses that are already in many ways struggling to make it. So let me emphasize to you that we are working, one, to get past the pandemic, to get people back to work. Two, there are so many provisions that we are working on, like universal preschool for 3 and 4-year-olds, that will get women in particular back into the workforce earlier, because they won't have to worry about childcare and affordable childcare. We're also working to get subsidized childcare for the youngest children, because that will free up members of the workforce who want to work, and would decrease those paying pressures, hiring pressures for you. I have also been working a lot with apprenticeship programs, because I don't know if you heard, but the big Infrastructure Investments and Job Act just passed, and will mean tremendous jobs and opportunities at all levels of the economy everywhere in the country. And so I have been working with apprenticeship programs, looking at how to skill up a workforce for infrastructure. And that is everything from roads and bridges to high-speed internet everywhere, to a modernized electric grid, to even some of our natural resources. And apprenticeship programs are going to be part of that. And I would anticipate that I was just at a small machinist last week, maybe 2 weeks ago. These small businesses that manufacture individual parts for bigger projects will be up and coming. And I can see that happening, right here in Kent and surrounding areas. So I wanted you to know that between apprenticeship programs, education, reshuffling of jobs, and bringing parents back into the workforce, I hope that that will relieve some of those pressures and how difficult it's been to find people to staff up with. The other thing I wanted to talk about was your expenses, that it is really hard to get hold of things, whether it's a raw material, or it is a label for a bottle of wine, or it is an aluminum can if you are a brewer. All of these supply chain issues have been a real problem. And this is something that I think the whole world became aware of, late in 2021. It's an issue I've been working on with hay farmers in Ellensburg for about a year, because this didn't just start with the pandemic and the trade imbalance, although it's been made far worse by that. But we have international shipping companies that are purposely taking empty containers back to China so that they can bring over more goods here. At the same time, they are having trouble keeping up with American consumers buying stuff. We are buying stuff because we're not able to go out and buy services the way that we used to. And so we need a combination of a change in where Americans can spend money, shifting back to travel, theater, dining out, experiences, going to get a haircut, a massage, like going back to the services that your businesses represent, and backing off our unquenchable demand for things from China. And then the other big part of supply chain is microchips, and the fact that we are so dependent on foreign countries for such a critical element in everything from our phones to our cars to our vacuum cleaners. We need to start manufacturing at home. The United States used to manufacture, Silicon Valley, we used to manufacture 37% of the world's microchips. and we are down to 12% now. It is a similar drop in percentage for Europe. I think Europe's down to about 7% now, which means that for the goods that we need every day, that we are so dependent on, we are heavily reliant on foreign countries and foreign manufacturers. That is why this week we are passing the Competes Act, the America Competes Act. The idea there being that we need to re-onshore manufacturing here at home. I'm not saying we do that with everything. It is not practical from a cost perspective to do that with everything. But with our national security in mind, thinking about what the pandemic meant when we couldn't find masks and ventilators and respirators and syringes when we needed them, thinking about how we were running out of sedatives and paralytics for people who needed to be intubated, it has provoked that thought about which items do we really need to have here, manufacture here, and have a domestic supply chain for that our national security depends on. And certainly microchips is one of those things. But there are some basic medications and electronics, and even the minerals needed for an energy system, for example, that we should be manufacturing right here at home. So that is the bill that we are passing this week. And I think that between that and the big infrastructure investment that will bring jobs and projects and tremendous prosperity and benefit in what it brings, plus the Ocean Shipping Reform Act that will help with supply chain issues and having a fair deal with international shippers, and getting people back to work and learning to live with COVID, I think that we will see brighter economic days ahead. So I'm happy to take your questions.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for that. We have a couple of questions. Liz is just going to look through those real quick. But I just wanted to say that you and I want to say it was last year, but maybe it wasn't. You and I went out to visit Anu and Northwest Industrial Staffing and Egg Hole. And I just want you to maybe just kind of recap what you learned from those businesses. They're all different industries, right? You went to a restaurant, an apprenticeship program, and then a staffing firm. And what was the purpose for that? And kind of what did you walk away with?
Sure. Well, the purpose, of course, was to get a glimpse of kind of a cross-section of Kent businesses. There was another element, which was, it was about a year ago. I think it was Black History Month. And so it was also to look at Black-owned businesses and particular successes and struggles, especially because Black businesses were underrepresented in the PPP program that helped small businesses. And that brought on a real urgency to help prioritize and target groups that kind of got missed in the first round because of, understandably feeling like, hold on a second, a forgivable loan sounds a little too good to be true. And that would be a very reasonable thing to think about such a program, but we didn't want anybody left out. So that was one. The other is that Anu has come up many times because Anu is sort of a pre-apprenticeship program where it gives a lot of, I want to say kids, but they're not kids, young adults, kind of a first chance or a second chance to get into a career in the trades. And it is a way to kind of test the waters and see if you like, being an electrical worker or a plumber, a pipe fitter, an iron worker, like kind of what's a carpenter, what suits you, try them all out and then move on to the apprenticeship program that best suits you. And it's, it is a really smart way that I think more people should think of when they think of a 4-year education. They ought to be thinking of 4 years where you get paid, where you earn while you learn, right? Where you get paid along the way, you learn along the way, you learn while you're working and get certifications. And also the concept of having kind of a recertification through your life. I come from a generation where you go and get an education and you're done with your education, but that is not the reality today. That with the changing economy, now with an infrastructure bill, we need some serious training up and retraining and skilling up of America, and Anu and apprenticeship programs are how you do that.
Yeah, well, thank you. I enjoyed those visits. The members enjoyed those visits. And, one thing I kind of walked away with is I think sometimes, we look at this issue and we're like, we're going to put a lot of money into this, an apprenticeship, that's great. But how are we going to start those conversations in the school and bringing the schools into those conversations so that the folks that they're, dealing with on a daily basis, they know that they're available. And those are the students that typically are kind of left out, or they just don't have the information. So I'm excited to see the power that you put behind that apprenticeship program. And we're, our school is very diverse. I won't go into the numbers, but our schools are very diverse here. And I think we can benefit greatly from that, is getting it to those kids early enough for them to know that they have a great decision to make. And these are livable wages, great jobs. It brings me up to a question that we have from Cindy. And her question was, how are we looking at trying to help with affordable living? The average home price in King County is $754,000. The average first-time home buyer cannot compete. There was talk of tax bill for the first-time home buyers. Is there any information on that?
Let me get to that in a moment. And I know for sure that there is a staff member from my team who is going through this exact frustration right now, working in a congresswoman's office and feeling like, where do I need to go in order to be able to afford a home? So I'll get to that in a moment. Let me just touch on high schools, because you mentioned that. I have been to several high schools in the area, Maple Valley, Auburn, seeing some tremendous apprenticeship programs, technology and metalwork, woodwork, carpentry, everything in the high schools. And then the apprenticeship programs can come and kind of choose the cream of the crop of those kids to come on and work either summer programs or into the apprenticeship program. So I'll mention that. So affordability is a tremendous problem. And the reality is that fundamentally, there just isn't enough housing, and there isn't enough of the right type of housing. And I read in the Seattle Times either yesterday or today about various cities introducing duplexes, smaller apartment buildings into areas that are zoned for single family homes in order to give a variety of sizes of homes, kind of beginner homes, homes that are meant for a family, and then homes for later in life that you can downsize to, because the incentive for builders is to build McMansions on postage size lots. That's how they can maximize their profits. But that's not good for people who just want to get their foot in the door, so to speak, buy a starter home and have that part of the American dream. And we know that it is that home ownership, which is how you create wealth. And so making sure that everybody has that opportunity, either through a condominium or a duplex or a starter home or whatever size home, that over time is how you build wealth. It's very hard to build wealth if you're throwing money away every month on rent that you will never get back. There are also innovative programs, I'll just touch on this, in parts of my district that are called housing trusts. So the land belongs to the city or a trust or an organization. Low income houses are built on that land to the tune of $200,000 for the house. Those are allocated for people, I wouldn't even say low income, I would say like teacher's salary, like a livable wage that still can't afford a house. So you'll see that in Chelan County, for example, you can then get into one of these homes. It is allocated for affordable housing. As you accumulate wealth over time, you can sell that house to somebody else, but it will not have increased appreciably in price, but still you haven't thrown your money away. You still get to take that money with you and put it as a down payment for your next home. So it's a really good way to help people get a foot in the door.
Awesome. Thank you. Cindy, if you have follow-up, let me know. I would like now to have Allison go off mute. She has a great comment, is also asking for support on certain bills. Allison with Out of the Box Manufacturing.
Hi, good afternoon, Congressman Schreier. Thanks for the chance to talk to you. I just wanted to express some support for the USICA. You talked about innovation and competitiveness, and the CHIPS Act is really important. I understand that's passed, but just waiting for those funds to be allocated. One thing that I want to bring to your attention that is really important to, the chips problem and manufacturing stateside is to not forget printed circuit boards. So when we have chips, right? And we have to put them on the circuit board. And the circuit board is a big issue because there just aren't very many stateside manufacturers anymore. That is done overseas a lot. So just want to, bring that to your attention as a really detailed part of that problem. I remember reading not too long ago that there is an American PCB Act, but I was looking this morning and I couldn't find the number to help share that with you. So I will do a little bit more homework on that and provide it to you if I can, because I think that that's a good program as well. But yeah, and then my door is open as you continue to have these conversations. If you'd ever like to come and see that work being done in your district, please, I'm happy to show you. We're here and we're doing it right in the backyard.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. I would love to. Thank you for pointing out circuit boards. A funny little kind of anecdote is that my brother is a freelance chemist who makes molybdenum wafers that are used for circuit boards. So I thought I would just throw it out there that it all comes full circle now. I can barely say the word. And I don't know the details of what Intel is planning in Ohio, but I wonder if they are planning both the chips and the circuit boards. Do you happen to know?
I don't. I did hear that. I have heard that there are some manufacturers bringing operations stateside, which is really encouraging. There's a lot of environmental concerns that I think are very valid. As a business owner in the electronics industry, I think it's important to find a happy medium. There's reasons that those things have gone overseas, but I don't think that those environmental concerns or challenges aren't things that we can't figure out, so that we can still do that type of work here in the U.S.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think like on a broader scale here, we need to think about our environment globally, right? So where would you rather have those circuit boards made? Where would you rather have that mining done for precious metals? Where would you rather have solar panels manufactured? In China, where there are no environmental regulations, or in the US, where there are regulations, and we can do things in a cleaner, responsible way. And so I think you're right about finding the right balance and recognizing that offshoring things does not make for a cleaner earth. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Allison. We do have another question surrounding something that I think typically you might not hear from the business community, but we are dealing with this on a daily basis of how to keep our neighborhoods safe, or the appearance of our neighborhoods being safe. And there's such a struggle right now. So I'll just go ahead and read the question. Is there anything being done at the federal level to help states provide more facilities for mental health treatment? We hear that Washington State does not have enough beds to help people who need counseling, treatment, transition from being unsheltered. Is there any work being done there?
Thank you for that question. And you're right. I think you could answer this question on multiple levels. There are not enough mental health providers in the entire country. And that is why I'm no longer on the Education and Labor Committee, but that is why for multiple areas where we need more people, that could be nursing, that could be counseling, social workers or psychiatrists, or it could be rural doctors. We need to incentivize education in those fields to shore up our resources, and we need to have common sense immigration policies so that if you are a counselor or social worker abroad and you want to live in the United States, we should be welcoming the best, the brightest in careers where we need help right here at home. So that would be part one. Part two is these innovative projects are happening more on the local level. Like in your neighbor, Auburn, has a whole system where the city works with individual landlords who are willing to take a little bit of a risk as long as they know that the city support system is working with a family to help them pay their monthly rent. At the same time, the city brings in social workers to keep that family in a place where they can hold a stable job and pay their rent. And by doing that, I mean, it really is like on a family by family basis, they are bringing stability to people's lives. Most of that work is happening on the local level. What we have done in Congress, the eviction moratorium, that was fine for a couple months as a stopgap, but it really never should have been a very long, kind of dragged out process, because it just leaves renters with a huge debt, and it leaves landlords not being paid for a year and a half. It was never supposed to be a long-term solution. Vouchers would have been a much smarter solution. And what we have now is rental assistance that has gone out to states and to counties, and the counties are working to distribute that to landlords to help make them whole. And I sure hope that in response, landlords will not make their rents so unaffordable that people cannot afford to live in the same communities.
Yeah, thank you. I know at some point in time, there were a lot of funds that were kind of holding, and they weren't getting out to the landlords, or they weren't helping people. Where are we? I have nothing to do with it. Where are you guys with those funds that are just sitting there and unused, or have they been used?
Those funds have been distributed to states and counties have been distributing them at different speeds, some faster than others. And I don't want to put Eleanor on the spot. Eleanor might have a better finger on the pulse of, like, initially Pierce County was just cooking, getting it out quickly, helping as many people as they could. King County was having a little more trouble. I'm not sure where things are right now.
I think that King County has implemented some new systems to help move the money a little bit faster. And I'm happy to follow up directly with anyone for like more specific updates, but as the Congresswoman said, it's being managed at the county level.
And I would mention, thank you, Eleanor. I would mention one more thing, because you talked about safety and tied that to mental health. But I mean, there's a whole issue right now with crime and theft, and our police in many cases are feeling like they don't have all the tools they need to enforce the law. And when criminals know this, then they act with impunity. And I just think it's really important to strike the right balance here and support our police officers and giving them the tools they need to keep criminals off the streets. That, when you are robbing stores, then there needs to be a consequence, or else you can expect the same behavior again. So working to appropriately support our law enforcement will help keep our cities safer.
Yeah, that's a big issue here, and in many cities, but here
everywhere.
in the city of Kent, the police department is now doing roundtables, whereas they're gathering businesses in a certain district and getting together, letting them know what their limitations are as far as police, and then also letting them know what they can do as business owners. So you talked about tools. Can you be a little bit more specific about what tools you think they need? Because our goal as a business community is like, how can we support them to do their job? Because we are struggling under the new laws and legislation, and they're feeling like their hands are kind of handcuffed. So when you talk about tools, if you just be a little more direct about what that looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, part of the problem is there is a state law that had some lack of clarity in it, and because I think a lot of police officers are feeling like they are just being watched under magnifying glass right now and scrutinized, that they just didn't want to do anything that could potentially run afoul of this new legislation. So there are wording changes in the legislation that should help. There's reintroduction of clauses like reasonable suspicion, so that they can pursue somebody if they have a reasonable suspicion that they have committed a crime. There's also new changes so that if there is a case where there's mental illness, but you do need to use some force, which could just be taking a risk to guide somebody out of the middle of the street, that they can do that and feel like they are not running afoul of the law. So that is part of it. And the other part is that there are some very simple tools that would really help our police departments and our communities. I mean, there are a couple things that are highly supported across the board in every community and by every police department I have spoken with. One of them is they need more mental health experts to help on mental health calls, because our police officers were trained to protect and to fight crime. They were not trained to be expert in mental health breakdowns. And so having that support is one, and I've introduced an amendment into this year's funding bill to provide that. The other is body cameras, which give police officers so much cover in showing that the circumstance they were in and why they did what they did. And that is so important to the police officers, but it's also so important to communities, in particular, I would say communities of color, where there is a history of lacking trust and sometimes a strained relationship, that if there's transparency, that's good for everybody. And every police officer I have spoken with supports the idea of having body cams.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I know that Tina Orwell introduced a bill a while ago where it's, I don't know the number, I'm going to say like 711, but it's like almost like a 911 where you call, instead of calling 911, you call a different number if someone is experiencing a mental health crisis. So I appreciate the work that she is doing and everyone that supports that. And then the body cameras, that is something that, you know, transparency is important in all situations, but much more in this situation as well. I do want to make the note, thank you so much to yourself and Eleanor for giving that update on where the funds were here. So King County funds are going out. They are working with Multi-Service Center. And so I know that they do great work. So that helps us understand where those funds are and getting those distributed. So just want to make sure I'm not missing anything in the comments. Does anyone have any other questions, comments? Yeah, several organizations, not just Multi-Service Center. Thank you so much, Sarah. Yeah.
And by the way, a lot of counties and cities have money left over from the American Rescue Plan, by the way, that can be used for all different things. I introduced a bill with my friend Dusty Johnson to be able to use that for mental health services. There has been a lot of flexibility given to counties and cities about how to use that money. So they can use that for businesses. They can also use that for housing, buying a hotel. You know, you get a roof over somebody's head, get them showered, cleaned up, and feeling safe. And it is remarkable how quickly you can get somebody back on the right track.
Yeah, we'd love to see some work with commercial affordability as well, and ensuring that folks that want to have a business downtown, that they can afford it. And how is that supplementing? We do a lot with rental assistance, but I wonder if there's an opportunity to do rental assistance with businesses for commercial affordability. We did see an increase in rates or rental rates during the pandemic, and that was hard on businesses, right? You kind of bound to this new standard of doing business, but then also now you're paying more. And there wasn't really, to what I know, which is somewhat limited, no reprieve for the commercial renters.
It's also surprising that at a time when businesses were going under and there was vacancy, that rents would go up. So I also just want to make sure that there's no price gouging going on, as we've seen with gasoline and overseas shipping. Let's also protect the consumer from bad actors blaming things on inflation.
Yeah, I think, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and say maybe they're in a situation where maybe they own multiple properties and people aren't paying. So the only way to supplement that would be to raise it. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt, but nonetheless, the people on the other end, we're suffering. So
sure, absolutely plausible.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, good.
Right. Well, thank you. Any other questions?
No other questions in the chat, just recognizing the role women play in the workforce and childcare. Folks would love to hear more information on housing. So we, would love to invite you back. We appreciate your time, and always, just reach out if you want to do some visits in the community. I'd love to join you again.
I love it. Well, thank you very much. Always great to see you. And I look forward to our next meeting.
Yes. Thank you. Awesome. Okay. And I just also want to recognize Eleanor, who has joined us on our Government Affairs Committee, and just coming in to give us any updates that we have. Again, the Government Affairs Committee meets on a monthly basis, and we are meeting online right now. So if you want to join or get an update from Congresswoman Kim Schreier's office, you can do that at our monthly Government Affairs meeting. Also in the chat, Eleanor has dropped her information. So anyone who wants to work with the Congresswoman on any of her initiatives, want to learn anything or want to learn more, you can reach out to Eleanor, and I'm sure she'd be happy to kind of set that up for you. Okay, I am just going to check in. I know we have another speaker who's going to come in right at 12:15, but I just want to check. Samantha, are we good, or are we still waiting for her?
Yeah, still 5 more minutes, but you know, in the meantime, I'd love to say, you know, some of these questions that were directed towards Representative Schreier would also be great questions to talk to Congressman Smith about. I know just last week he met with the Department of Community and Human Services, the King County Department of Community and Human Services, about a lot of these housing issues, a lot of the mental health issues. I think that's, you know, going into the new year, he's been very concerned about, you know, just making sure that we're addressing crisis, you know, mental health crises on the streets, and how that affects our businesses, how that affects, you know, the family members of the loved ones going through that crisis. So, you know, if you have follow-up questions, you know, I just met with the Department of Community and Health Services last week, and I know they did mention it was a slow kind of rollout of that rental assistance, but I think my notes say $30 to $40 million have been distributed, and that they've revitalized a new system to kind of get that funding out quicker. So I think that would be, you know, a great thing to talk about. I know we're also talking about economic issues, but definitely how we can keep our streets, you know, both safe and keeping our communities that are, you know, particularly prone to mental health issues, keeping them healthy and making sure they're getting the right services, I think is incredibly important.
Yeah, I think everyone wants this, we're all going for the same goal, the same mission, which is to keep everybody healthy and safe. And it doesn't matter where you are on that spectrum in the economic world. It really matters that everyone from top to bottom feel like they are supported and they have the resources that they need. While we're waiting for the representative, Samantha, I do want to just kind of give you the opportunity. I know that the representative has a lot of different folks that work on different things. Do you want to just talk about specifically what's your wheelhouse, and if someone had a question, why they would reach out to you, or what your expertise is?
Absolutely, yeah, and I've seen some of you on the Government Affairs Committee, so thank you again for inviting me to that and letting me engage with you all. But I work in the Congressman's Renton office, so not far from Kent, although right now the office is doing kind of a telework system. But I cover economic, housing, LGBTQ, and tech issues for the district. So there is plenty that you can reach out to me or my colleagues about, you know, especially as I think folks have been really concerned about economic revitalization kind of as we get out of the pandemic. And so I'm always happy to try to get updates from our DC office on legislation, try to connect you with the Small Business Administration or the Washington Small Business Development Center. Any way that our office can be helpful, we want to make sure you're getting that Nordstrom quality care, you know, so making sure that we're responsive to you and that you're feeling heard in the community. And, you know, I just think it's a great opportunity to have this conversation and to hear from Congresswoman Schreier, who did an awesome job, you know, kind of giving an update on what's going on in Congress, but then also, you know, just talking about local issues and what's on your mind, and, you know, kind of keeping up to date with not just economic issues, but a whole variety of issues going on in the district.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate you just making yourself available. We met only a year ago. I think I've talked to you so many times and you've provided me and, put me in the right direction. And we just, as a chamber, we appreciate that. So I do see that Representative Smith has joined us. And I hate to put you on the spot, but I'm sure it's not the first time it's happened to you. Thank you so much for being here. I'll just make this quick note. A few years ago when I was working with the University of Phoenix, you and I actually sat on a panel together with the Seattle South Sound Chamber, and that was my first time meeting you. And that was some time ago. I was obviously in a different role with the university, but I appreciate your commitment to the community and everything that you're doing. So the floor is yours, and we'll also have it open for questions that they'll put in the chat if they need to, but looking to hear an update for you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Sure. Yeah, no, I'll just hit a couple highlights and then throw it over for your questions. Want to make sure I cover what you're interested in. So the whole bunch of issues we're working on in South King County. I want to thank the chamber. I know you've been real leaders in helping deal with some of those challenges in South King County, and also just businesses for the last 2 years. It's never easy to run a business, but in COVID world, it's especially difficult. All the decisions you have to make. Do you stay open when you bring in workers? How do you work with the community? So I thank you for that and sympathize with the challenges there. And a lot of the challenges we face now certainly were exacerbated by COVID, but they were there before. I think in the King County area, it's inequality is the bottom line. We have a concentration of wealth. Certainly there are areas of, the Puget Sound region of incredible wealth. And when we see it in housing prices, and then you have areas with a whole lot of food insecurity, housing insecurity, job insecurity. And really, we've gotten severely out of balance in terms of, wages in a big way. Apologize for that. That's just the bells in the background here. I grew up in South King County. I grew up in SeaTac, actually graduated from Tyee High School. And my father was a ramp serviceman at United Airlines. And I look at what he was making, in the 70s and early 80s. And what the cost of living was at that time, primarily the cost of housing and the cost of education are the two things I think stand out most. And the cost of housing and the cost of education and the cost of healthcare have all gone like this, whereas the wages for the job my father did have kind of gone like this. And that gap, has put an enormous amount of pressure on people in South King County just to be able to afford a place to live. I mean, it is absolutely the case. And I make this point when I'm talking with folks at Amazon about their fulfillment center down there in Kent. It's great that you pay people $16 an hour to start, for working in the warehouse. I've worked in a warehouse before. I'm familiar with what the job is. You can't live on $16 an hour in Kent. You can't. I mean, you can barely afford a place to live because of how much rent and housing is. So what's a $2 trillion company doing paying workers a wage that means they can't afford to live? And that's a gross oversimplification of the problem. But I think that's a lot of what we're wrestling with. How do we start to get people the wages and healthcare benefits and retirement that they need to be able to work and make a living? And that inequality, I think, drives a lot of the challenges and a lot of problems we have, greatly exacerbated, of course, by the pandemic. That has, taken so many people out of congregate settings, if you will, which is basically human interaction and the pressure that's put on our children who have either not been, in school or who have been dealing with online learning, which is very inadequate. All of those challenges are just exacerbated by the economic inequality. So, was very supportive of raising the minimum wage, but that's not the only answer to this. This is why the reconciliation package on childcare and healthcare and education that failed in the Senate, I think is so important, is to give working families more of the support they need in order to be able to make it. The cost of childcare being another thing that drives a lot of these challenges. So from a national policy standpoint, really looking at ways to make sure people have the benefits and support that they need. And I think King County also has a significant problem right now with public safety and also with racism and how we deal with it. The diversity in South King County, I think, is one of our great strengths. The area, I think, has been slow to respond to being inclusive with that diversity. And the way I always tell that story, as I mentioned, I graduated from High School. That was in 1983. And when I graduated, it was 95% white. South King County, when I was growing up, was a blue collar white community. It is not. It is incredibly diverse now. But when you look at leadership positions, and this is changing, this has really changed in the last 10 years. There is more diversity in leadership in things like, elected positions, business leaders, education leaders, chamber leaders. But it took a while to have the leadership positions really reflect the community, and that created greater tension that I still think we need to work on and focus on. And then now, I think one of the big issues in the county is public safety. We have a major break between law enforcement and the community and political leaders, and we're all kind of screaming at each other in a variety of different ways. Meanwhile, our communities are less safe, and we need to work on that. And I am 100% in favor of police reform. I think we had a model of policing in this country that was too focused on overly aggressive policing, with a lack of accountability and a lack of appreciation for the impacts that bias, bigotry, and racism can have on that. And we need to fix that. But I'll be 100% upfront about this. Cutting the police budget is not the way you fix that. Looking at a bias system, in fact, I'll just give you my example. I was speaking with a woman today who works at a trauma center on brain injury. And of all the issues she raised, she was upset about the fact that in King County, we're getting rid of bike helmet laws. All right. And however you may feel about bike helmet laws, I don't ride a bike. They seem to be pretty effective at preventing brain injuries. But the reason we're getting rid of them is because people have concluded that they are disproportionately enforced, which basically means that more people of color are being ticketed for not wearing helmets than non-people of color. I would suggest that the thing to do there is to go at the unequal enforcement, not to simply get rid of the rule. I mean, we as a society can decide whether or not we got to have that rule, but it shouldn't be based on that. If in fact we have unequal enforcement, then that's what you need to go after. And I think we're seeing that, some of the unintended consequences of some of the laws that have been passed are creating a lot of tension in our communities. So we got to get people back together. I have worked very closely with Jesse Johnson, who I think is doing a great job, state rep in Federal Way, who's been sort of a leader on police reform. There are some fixes to what was done in the legislature last year that need to happen. But more than anything, we need to get on the same page with law enforcement to figure out what should the police be doing, how do we support them? And they've got to be willing to be accountable, because of a huge problem that there was no accountability. We've got to find that balance, because what I hear about over and over again in South King County is people are very concerned about public safety. The crime rate is up. People are feeling less safe in the community than they have in a generation. It's an issue we need to address. But I hope everyone understands that that is all tied in to poverty and inequality as well. And if all we do is look at this from a law enforcement standpoint, and we don't address poverty, inequality, and bias, then we won't get there. And that's what my constituents are most concerned about. Obviously, on the congressional level, like I said, we're still working on trying to figure out the reconciliation package. Can we get something to help support struggling families? Got to pass the appropriations bill. As the chairman of the Armed Services Committee, I want to make sure that we don't go to war in Eastern Europe. So we've got that whole thing to talk about. But really, in the Puget Sound region, inequality is what is driving a lot of discord, unfairness, and problems on a whole series of issues. And I'm trying to work with community leaders to figure out how we can better address those. Final thing before I take your questions, one piece of good news about the whole pandemic is sort of the rise of community-based organizations. The need was there, but then when the pandemic hit, it just grew. And so community-based organizations had to step up because there was so much demand, so much need. I know we've had a number of new food banks that have propped up in South King County. Some of our community-based organizations were instrumental in making sure that underserved communities had access to the health care that they needed, including vaccination. Those organizations are now, stronger, better organized, and better in a position to help with a broader range of issues. I want to figure out how we can empower them. And make sure that they have the resources they need to provide the services they're providing, and that it's properly coordinated throughout the region. Because these problems, problems that are in Kent or in Federal Way or in Seattle or in Tukwila. I don't represent Linwood or places like that, but I imagine that the problems are similar there as well. So we have to try to coordinate in terms of how we address that. That's a few of the things that we're working on in my office, but I am happy to address whatever issue you want to raise and answer any questions that you have.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate that update and your just directness about what you see as being an issue. I appreciate that. It does raise some of the questions we asked Representative Schreier, but you talked about a lot. When you think about inequality and one way to build wealth, and that is through housing. And that's an issue that we're having. So one of our members here, Cindy Cameron with Fairway Independent Mortgage, has a question. It is, how are you looking at trying to help with affordable living? The average home price in King County is $754,000. The average first-time home buyer can't compete with this. There were talks or bills for first-time home buyers. Do you have any update or any information on that?
Yeah, I mean, there's two big, well, there's three. I mean, one of the things that we've been doing is we've tried to make it easier for first-time home buyers in terms of, giving them the ability to get loans more easily, to put less money down, to sort of get into the house. And look, that's, with a housing market that's going like this, that's really important. I'm not going to deny that. Now, if that housing market starts going like that, that can be very problematic. So I would suggest that aside from just focusing on those issues, there are two other huge issues that we need to focus on. Number one is supply, and supply of housing in general, but supply of affordable housing specifically. I had a very revealing conversation with Mark Domes, who's the head of the Regional Homeless Authority. And I had never really thought of it this way before. But it used to be, and certainly at the end of World War I and then the World War II, one of the ways we dealt with so many young men coming back and needing housing was there was a lot of single occupancy apartments that were very small and very affordable. We just don't have that anymore because people are going for the best value. It's the example. When I was a kid, I used to deliver newspapers right up by Chinook Junior High School. And there was this reasonably decent sized lot not too far away up 188th Street that had a double wide trailer on that I used to drive. And about 6-7 years ago, I was driving by and I was like, what the hell is that? Someone came in, bought the lot and put two like 4,500 square foot stucco, mansions there, which is fine. Okay. And they're going for like $1 million. That has been where the money has gone. We have stopped building affordable housing. I mean, the house my father bought was when he bought it, it was like a 900 square foot Rambler. We put an addition on the back of it over the course of about a decade. But we don't have affordable housing, and we need a very deliberate policy to say, we need to have housing that you can afford even when you're down on your luck, and we don't. That's number one. But the second thing, and I actually just talked with my wife about this, and I don't have a solution to this problem, but when you look at how this has played out and why we have so many houses that are the average price of $750,000, it's because of what's happened in the economy over the course of the last 50 years. We've seen dramatic increases in GDP and everything you can measure. I mean, America has not slowed down in terms of our economic growth over the course of the last 50 years, but that economic growth has gone to shareholders and executives and away from workers. Workers have seen their wages flatline, their benefits go down in terms of retirement and healthcare. Meanwhile, the stock market's going to Pluto, as they say. So shareholders, they got all kinds of money, and that's great. But most of the people I grew up with, they're not making their living off of what the stock market's doing. They're making their living off of what their employer is paying them. And their employer is trying to pay them less and less and less so that they can get their stock price up. We've got a concrete strike right now, which, by the way, is crippling our transportation stuff and is going to make it very difficult to open the West Seattle Bridge in a timely manner. And, you know, it is Cal Portland, which is a publicly traded company driving up their stock prices, you know, and they are basically trying to break the union in order to keep wages down, pure and simple. And as it happens, you know, the contract runs out on February 1. And so the employees, they lose their health care on February 1. Well, it's February 3 now, so I'm dated what I'm saying. So they've lost their health care. And, you know, Cal Portland's pretty sure that puts them in a better negotiating position. I don't think Cal Portland's headed to the poor farm anytime soon. They're just trying to drive up the stock price. And I think we need to seriously look at the incentives we give to corporations, the protections and the laws we do to push those towards, it's not just about your stock price. It's not just about, you know, do you go up next quarter? It's about what are you doing for the community? What are you doing for the people who work for you? Because as long as those shareholders are making that money, there's always going to be that person who can walk in and pay cash. And, you know, what's a worker going to do? You can't compete with that. And if you're selling the house, you're selling to the person who can give you the most money. So we got to get at that fundamental injustice in the way the American economy has developed over the course of the last 50 years, or people are always going to be pushing a rock up a hill.
Yeah, thank you for that answer. I just learned, and I don't know if this is a state thing or how it happened, but the homes in Las Vegas. So here, what I see in the housing market is if a new development comes up, and even if the houses are $500,000, $600,000, people come in, they pay cash, and you kind of sell that development within days. People don't actually have a chance. There's a thing in Las Vegas, and I don't know why it is, but when you go for a new development, they do a lottery. Maybe it's because it's Las Vegas, but they do a lottery. And as long as you qualify for that, they kind of just pick a name. So when you're looking at it from an equality standpoint, it doesn't matter. As long as you qualify, if they pick your name out, you can go, instead of someone going over to be able to buy 4 houses because they're only $250,000 a piece. That might be something to look into, or maybe some better understanding of why or how they can do that. But I think it does level out inequality in purchasing homes that are affordable.
Good idea.
Yeah, I love that idea. So thank you for that. We had another question from Greg Hafner with Curran Law Firm, and it is anything in the components of the Build Back Better plan to help states provide more facilities for mental health treatment? We hear that Washington State does not have enough beds to help people who need counseling treatment and transition from being unsheltered.
Yeah, we don't have enough inpatient. We frankly don't even have enough outpatient in terms of, you know, qualified mental health providers. Yes, there was in the bill that we passed in the House a substantial amount of money to support healthcare overall and to support mental health in particular. I will also say that the Recovery Act that we passed, I forget how long ago, September, when was that one? It was a while ago, 6 months ago, and also the CARES Act before that. I've met with some of my local community health centers, and money that was provided through the CARES Act and the Recovery Act also helped them have enough money to hire mental health providers. But as I think about it, your specific question as to whether or not it is going to build inpatient beds, that I don't know. Samantha, who's on the call with us here on my staff, you can look into that. I don't know if it went to any sort of capital facilities. I know it went to support existing community health centers and other health centers so that they could hire mental health professionals to provide treatment. I don't know about the inpatient side of it, but let me just say there is a crushing need for that, you know, because I mentioned we're having a public safety issue. Obviously, we also have a huge homelessness issue that is not just in Seattle. And there's a lot of different components to that. I would suggest that one of the big components was what I was talking about earlier that I had heard from the Regional Homeless Authority, lack of access to really cheap, affordable housing in those circumstances. So, you know, someone goes through a bad stretch of luck, or even if they make a bunch of bad decisions and they wind up in a bad economic position, 50, 60 years ago, you had a place relatively cheap that you could hang out in until things turned around. You don't have that anymore. So providing supply for that is important, but the mental health piece is huge too. So many people who can't, get, can't get a job, can't sustain that job, can't, take care of themselves and their family. It's because of mental health issues that are not being treated. And we need to dramatically expand those services and make them available. People also, to some degree, drug addiction is also a mental health issue that's part of that as well. And inpatient treatment for drug abuse is also really important.
Yeah, sounds like we got a lot of things working all at the same time. So we need dedicated people getting to the root of the issue and trying to fix those issues. We are going to just kind of transition just a little bit and change gears. And I want to have Allison come off of mute. She is with Out of the Box Manufacturing right here in South King County. And I know she has a question for you, Allison.
Thanks, Zenobia. Good afternoon, Congressman Smith. I wanted to take a moment to talk about the USICA. I understand that the CHIPS Act has passed and we're just waiting for those funds to be allocated. But one thing in particular that I've learned, and I bring this to you because you chair the Armed Services Committee, is that the DoD wants to go lead-free for a lot of their prototyping and R&D as far as electronics go. And I think that that's really important and appropriate as well.
So he wants to go what free? I missed that.
Lead-free.
Lead-free. Okay, go ahead. Yes.
So chips are really important. I've heard a lot of conversation about innovation, technology, supply chain support, but I'm not hearing a lot of talk about printed circuit board fabrication. And I want to bring that to your attention, especially if the DoD wants to go lead-free for R&D, because those circuit boards have to be made stateside to comply with all of the regulations, right? So printed circuit board fabrication has to be part of that conversation, or all the funding that's being talked about. There's nothing to put all those parts on, right? So
I'm familiar with that. We had to work with that in the Armed Services Bill. And what we're pushing to is to make manufacturing of printed circuit boards in the US more competitively advantageous, if you will. But are you saying that there's a problem with printed circuit boards that are made in the US on the lead-free issue? Or...
I'm saying that there's not a sufficient supply chain to support the desire for the DoD to go in that direction. The American PCB Act, from what I understand, can help resolve that issue. But I was telling Congressman Schreier earlier that I was trying to look for that number for the bill for you guys, and I couldn't find it. But it sounds like that will address the problem. So that's great.
And that was part of the defense bill that we passed in
okay.
December. So, and the thinking is sort of the build it and they will come thing. If you incentivize not just DoD, but commercial manufacturers as well to purchase American-made printed circuit boards, then more will be built. That's what we were told. Now, there was a robust argument about that. The Microsofts of the world and the Honeywells of the world were skeptical about that. And we're not fond of this piece of legislation, and we had to fight them throughout the whole process to get it done. But it seems to me that it's quite likely that if that market, there's one big printed circuit board manufacturer in Missouri that has said they're going to start building more facilities and producing more product now that they have that opportunity. So we'll see. One thing, I'm pretty sure the CHIPS Act has not actually passed yet. It passed the Senate. USICA passed the Senate. But then more or less died in the House. As we speak, we are doing what is called the Competes Act, which I'm going to be voting on here in about a half hour. That is the counterpart to the Senate bill. They're not the same. So they're going to have to get together and try to resolve that and pass a conference report. But the CHIPS Act is a big part of why we want to get this not just out of the Senate or not just out of the House, but all the way across the finish line to the president and signed. So after we pass this, there'll be a conference committee process to try and get that done.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, Allison, for that. Are there any other questions? Just take a look in my chat box. Well, I appreciate your comment earlier today, Representative, about the human services and how folks just kind of went into action when the pandemic hit. And I think that's important that we recognize folks that that are boots on the ground, working with those communities that are underserved, and also serving folks who had never, I had businesses who had to lay off folks, and those folks had never experienced, food insecurity or housing insecurity. So we were able to partner with like Northwest Harvest and do sort of a secret food bank, right, for folks that just don't know that system. And so I appreciate the effort that all legislators have kind of put in to support the people who are supporting during this pandemic, and also the work that was done to help support the chambers as well. Smith is a great person to ask. Are there any questions? Oh, if there are any questions about the Ukrainian situation, Rep. Smith is a great person to ask. That has come in from the chat. Any update maybe?
I can just give you, I mean, we were just briefed by the Secretary of Defense, Secretary of State, and a variety of others about the situation. And yeah, I mean, the oversimplification of it is the global community here is trying to act in unison to discourage Putin from invading. They've got the forces massed on the border. The history here is very complicated in terms of how Russia looks at Ukraine. But at the end of the day, Ukraine is an independent country that ought to be free to make whatever decisions they want to make. And I hope people understand that this isn't just about Ukraine. I'll be 100% clear. We are not going to war with Russia over Ukraine. We're not sending our military forces in to fight that battle. We want to shore up our allies in the region. We want to put economic sanctions in place to discourage, to basically promise those economic sanctions if that happens, and strengthen other folks in the region. But, I mean, Putin and to some degree, China, if they have an expansionist view, and Putin certainly does, he wants to reconstitute the Soviet Empire. So you've got a number of countries in Eastern Europe that used to be part of the Warsaw Pact that are now independent nations, Romania, Poland, the Baltics, amongst others. And from the very start, they didn't want to go back under Russia's thumb. So we've been working with them and supporting them and building alliances. Then of course you have the former Soviet socialist republics. The Baltics are a former Soviet socialist republic, not part of Eastern Europe, as is Ukraine, Belarus. And most of they want to remain independent. Sadly, Belarus has fallen back under control of a dictator in Russia. But we believe in economic and political freedom, and we don't think someone like Putin should be able to take away that economic and political freedom from Ukraine just because he's got the bigger military. So we're working in concert, with the UN, with our partners in Europe, to deter that from happening. And I will say, most of the intel that I was getting a couple of weeks ago was, if not a done deal, it was pretty close. They really felt like this Putin, was lining up to do it, and they couldn't see why he wouldn't. In the last few days, as public pressure has been mounted, I think that's given him pause, because the hope on his part and on Russia's part was that they could do this with sort of minimum costs. That the rest of the world would say, not our problem. Yeah, we wish you hadn't done it, but we're not really going to get that excited about it. So the fact that the rest of the world has said, something quite different, I think is making Putin rethink it, but we'll see. Apparently mid-February, end of February is the most likely time for the invasion because, fun fact, Ukraine freezes. And when it freezes, it's easier to roll tanks across it because otherwise it's a big muddy mess. So you got to go in when it's at its coldest, which is February. So think of that the next time you're planning a military invasion. Sorry, I have to keep my sense of humor in this job. That's just, part of how I do it. But we are hoping that we will get through that period and have sufficiently discouraged him to keep the peace in Eastern Europe. And diplomacy is key to that. Secretary Blinken and others are actively speaking with their Russian counterparts on a regular basis. So yeah, that's sort of what's going on over there.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. I know you are on a tight time schedule. We have you for a couple more minutes. This is my last ask for any questions for Representative Smith. Awesome. Well, there counterparts, employees, staffers, not sure what to call them. They are doing great work. They are available and have put their information in the chat. So if you want to reach out to them or have additional questions, the chamber can definitely facilitate that. Now I'd like to go back to Sarah.
Great, thanks.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Congressman Smith. We just want to thank you all for being here today, and for our guests for providing such great information and answering our questions and being so honest about stuff going on. We want to thank everyone for attending today and watching live on Facebook. Again, this was streamed live via South King Media, I Love Kent, and can be found on our YouTube channel to view at a later time. At this time, we also want to acknowledge our luncheon sponsor, Cindy Cameron, a loan officer with Fairway Independent Mortgage, and we thank you for your continued support of the chamber. And then before we go into upcoming events, we want to thank our gold, silver, bronze, and copper investors again. And then I think that's it, except for Zenobia is going to share some information on some upcoming events with us. Again, thank you all for joining us today.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. I sure appreciate it. We have some great events coming up. Thank you, everyone, for all of your great questions. Again, if you have more, just reach out to the chamber. We'll facilitate that conversation. Next month, is always every March, we have Mayor Ralph doing her State of the City, the business edition. So make sure that you register. The link will be in the survey that we send out after this event. The Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee is hosting their very first workshop, one of 3 for the year. We're going to do one each quarter, and this will be unpacking bias. Again, we'll have one every quarter, and at the end of the year, we will close with a summit, like a half-day summit on diversity, equity, and inclusion. We have some great speakers lined up for that as well. So you can register. We can drop it in the chat here, Eliza, the registration link, or you can go to kentchamber.com. And then also, you all can catch us live every other Friday interviewing local businesses. This month, we have Chandra Pugh with Well Natural and Rochelle Toro with Bloodworks Northwest. And the past interviews can be found on our Facebook page as well. So every other Friday, we're interviewing businesses just to find out a little bit more, introduce them to the community, not only the business community, but our community at large. So be on the lookout if you want to schedule an interview. Liza, I think we're booked out all the way until August, if I'm not mistaken. Liza will drop it in the chat after she did the other 3 things that I just asked her to do. Thank you. Sorry, Liza. And then the TNT networking group. So we started a bi-weekly networking group that meets every Thursday from 4 to 5:15. We would like for you to join us. Our next meeting is today. So we will see you there. And what else? I think that's all that I have. Just remember that the chamber is here for you. If you have any questions, comments, and concerns, you can give us a call or come down and visit. We are here Monday through Friday. Thank you so much for joining and have a great day.